Yo, what's going on, everybody? It is your boy Fitzmonk TV here, aka G.o.at. I'm back here today with another bonus episode of the Legit Shoot podcast. And yeah, you guys see the title of the video. We are going to be talking about why I believe Sasha Banks is the greatest female wrestler in the world, even though she's 0-6 at WrestleMania, right? I been holding off on this topic for a couple weeks just because a lot of you guys have been asking me to make this video. I've been teasing it on social media, and I finally decided to drop it. And I expect there to be a lot of backlash in the comment section. I expect there to be a lot of anger. I expect there to be some negativity, and like I always say, if you guys are talking in the comment section, I will just ban you from the channel because this is not the place for that. You guys can disagree with me all you want, because it's my opinion and subjective, even though I believe I'm a smarter wrestling fan than most of you. It's still just my opinion, right? You guys are, you guys have every right to have your own, and we can talk about it in the comment section, Just don't be toxic, don't be negative to one another. If I see that, you guys know I will ban you from the channel just like that, right? But we're going to be talking about that, and also we're going to be talking about the top 10 female wrestlers of all time. I've made a list. I got my notes here. I made a list, right? And this is post WrestleMania 37. So I'm filming this in April. We're getting ready for WrestleMania Backlash in a couple weeks. So I have my current list of top 10 female wrestlers. All right. I do have some notable exclusions, but we're going to be discussing that, so give me guys your list in the comment section, right? We're going to have some fun. I feel like this is going to be a very, very engaging video, all right? But let's start off with Sasha Banks. So the first thing, what's the first thing I can say, right? Yes, clown, she's 0-6 at WrestleMania. Should she be 0-6? Hell no. I feel like anybody with a brain and has anybody that's seen Sasha perform in the ring would agree with me, saying that there's no way in hell that one of the greatest female wrestlers of all time, one of the best wrestlers of her generation, should be 0-6 at WrestleMania. There are 3 WrestleManias where Sasha, in my opinion, should have won. And I'm going to remind you clowns, right? The ones that love to comment on every video and then tag me on social media. Like, first off, I'm just a Sasha Banks fan at the end of the day. All right. I don't have any connection to Mercedes. All right. I'm not related to her or anything like that. I'm just a fan, just like you guys. I would even consider myself a really big Sasha Banks fan. Right. She's my favorite wrestler by far ever in wrestling. I love Stone Cold and Daniel Bryan and Cena and CM Punk and AJ Styles, right? But out of all of them, Sasha Banks is my number one because she's the reason why I still watch WWE today, pretty much. If it wasn't for the Brooklyn match against Bayley in 2015, right, I was at that point, I was really low on the WWE product, and I had taken a long break from it, and then I watched that match, and it got me back into pro wrestling, right? Because I had been a fan of pro wrestling my entire life. But I just wasn't feeling it. Even today, let's be serious. WWE's creative, WWE's product is terrible. It's garbage. Doesn't matter how many good pay-per-views you get. Their TV is garbage. You're right. Their creative team, terrible. Vince McMahon is out of touch. If it wasn't for my investment level in a superstar like Sasha Banks, I would probably not be doing this. I wouldn't have this podcast. I wouldn't have this platform. I wouldn't be even watching as much as I do. And that's just me being honest. And I want to give a shout out to JDE. He's the one that made this layout, right? I didn't know when I was going to use it. I was like, we're going to be talking about why Sasha's the GOAT today. So let me just use this layout really quick. It's really dope. So shout out to JDE on Twitter for this awesome layout. But, right, I hate reminding people of this when people have been bringing up the 0-6 record. Because I'm a wrestling fan at the end of the day. And I hate, when people are talking about wrestling's not real. Like, it's entertainment. It's sports entertainment. We know about that. But the wrestling's real. There's real injuries. These superstars put themselves on the line. They put themselves through hell in the gym and their workout regimens and their diets to look the way they look on TV. Being a WWE superstar is one of the hardest professions. You can make an argument that it's harder than most sports professions. They don't get an off season. Right? They don't get a break. the second WrestleMania ends, they're right back getting ready for the next WrestleMania because they got Raw and SmackDown the next night. Being a wrestler is not easy at all. And even if you don't like wrestlers, even if you don't like WWE or wrestling in general, you should have respect for the people and how much they put into their profession. And when people bring up Sasha being 0-6, I have to remind them that this is a scripted product. We, the fans, don't get to decide who wins. Sasha and whoever she's in the ring against, she doesn't get to decide who wins. The person who decides the result of the match is usually made weeks, if not months in advance. It's Vince McMahon and his creative staff, but it's mainly Vince who chooses who's going to win, who's going to lose. Right? Like, it's a scripted product. It's there for our entertainment and our enjoyment. We don't decide who wins or loses, and we have no impact over the decision. None. We're just fans. So when people bring up she's 0-6, right, you got to understand that this is just for our entertainment. It's a scripted product. That's why I hate it how now WWE's in sports betting on FanDuel and all that. Like, do people who go into this and bet on matches and bet on winners, do they not understand that their bet has no effect on what happens because there's one person in charge of who wins and who loses? It's mind-blowing to me. It really is. The job of the wrestlers is to go out there and perform and put on a show. They don't get to decide who wins or who loses. If I was booking, of course I would have had Sasha beat Bianca at WrestleMania. The 3 WrestleManias that Sasha should have won, in my opinion, WrestleMania 32, right? When Charlotte won the Women's Championship, which later became the Raw Women's Championship, I would have had Sasha win that match. She was the baby face going into it, right? Becky was also a baby face, but Becky was nowhere near as over as Sasha was. They had built up Sasha for that moment. They gave her the huge entrance with Snoop Dogg, right? They had the money falling over and the confetti falling all over the arena. The pop she got. She had the Eddie Guerrero gear. Everything was geared up for the win that night. And I will never, never, never forgive WWE for not giving her that win. I don't care how good the rivalry was with Charlotte. Sasha should have never lost that title. Never. She should have won at WrestleMania 32 and held that title for a calendar year and then dropped it to Bayley at WrestleMania 33 a year later. That's what should have been the story. That's what they should have done because Sasha was easily one of the most over baby faces in the entire company at that time. Next up, let's go to WrestleMania 35, right? WrestleMania 33 with Bayley, right? That was Bayley's moment, right? Bayley still won that Fatal 4-Way. I had no problem with that. WrestleMania 34, they're on the pre-show. So I can sit here and say, oh, Sasha should have won a Battle Royal. The Battle Royal was meaningless. So honestly, I don't really care about that, right? But WrestleMania 35, the Women's Tag Team Championships, right? Sasha and Bayley spent most of 2018 trying to get those titles created. They finally got them created, won them at the Elimination Chamber, right? And then dropped them a month later to the Iconics. And you know what's the sad thing now about that is Billie Kay and Peyton Royce just got released from WWE a couple weeks ago. They're not even with the company. So you have the Iconics beat Sasha and Bayley, 2 of the greatest female wrestlers of all time, at WrestleMania. And they did nothing with those titles. It was a meaningless title reign. There's not one thing anybody remembers from the Iconics being Women's Tag Team Champions. Not one. I don't remember. The only thing I remember is they defended the titles against nobodies, against jobbers. Against jobbers, legit jobbers that they took from the street, depending on what city they were in. Right? Sasha and Bayley should have held those titles for most of, if not all of, 2019. Going to NXT, going to SmackDown, defending those titles, having matches with so many banger teams. Kind of like what they did in 2020 during the pandemic. But they should have done it in 2019 as babyfaces. The only good thing that came out of Sasha and Bayley not winning that match for WrestleMania 35 was Sasha going on hiatus and then coming back with the blue hair. And because she just went on, her match with Bianca kind of was like the end of like an amazing 1.5 year run Sasha had been on. Where, with the level of work she was putting in, the storylines, everything she did, people were invested in. Everything. So WrestleMania 35 was the second one, and then I would say WrestleMania 37 against Bianca. But, the more I think of it, I'm more at 50-50. It's all the way I think about WrestleMania 37 this year in Tampa. It's all going to depend on how Bianca's title reign goes. All going to depend on how Bianca's title reign goes. If she has a great title reign and maybe she drops it to Sasha at SummerSlam or next year at Mania in Dallas or whatever they do, right? Okay, if it's a really good title reign. If she fails, if she's not booked correctly, right, and she's not elevating the division and the division doesn't look stronger because of that, then I'm going to be more and more heavy on the fact that Sasha should have kept that title at WrestleMania 37. Because legit, you think about it, that's the only big thing on Sasha's Hall of Fame resume. Because we all know Sasha was to retire tomorrow. She's in the Hall of Fame, right? That's the only thing you could say that she hasn't done right. And that was completely out of her control, her not winning at WrestleMania. Whereas she should have at least 2, maybe even 3 WrestleMania victories by now. I hate how people bring up how she's the only person, the 4 horsewoman, that hasn't won a match at Mania. It's not cool. You know, Bayley has 2 wins that Bayley deserves, right? Becky has 2 wins, right? Charlotte has 3 wins, which, don't get me started. If you guys watch the Raw reviews, I don't want to talk about Charlotte at all, right? But if you look at it, and this kind of goes with one of the many reasons why I believe Sasha's the best female wrestler in the world, is you look at all of those moments, especially from the 4 horsewomen, because people look at the 4 horsewomen as the ones who defined the women's division in this era. From 2014 on, they have defined women's wrestling, right? You look at everything the 4 horsewomen have done at WrestleMania since they came up. What's the most memorable moment? It's not Charlotte beating Sasha and Becky at WrestleMania 32, as great a match that was. It's not Bayley in the 2 times she defended the Raw and SmackDown Women's Championship at Mania. It's not Becky. You know, even though people can look at Becky main eventing WrestleMania against Ronda and Charlotte, and, you know, Becky holding both the Raw and SmackDown Women's Championships at the end of the night. Sure, it's a memorable moment, but that main event sucked. It was disappointing. The match that people remember of was Sasha losing to Bianca at WrestleMania 37 in night 1. Some people are calling it one of the greatest WrestleMania main events of all time. In my opinion, it's the best women's match in the history of WrestleMania. Easily. And the thing about it is, I could say that about Sasha versus Becky versus Charlotte. You know, I could say that about Charlotte versus Asuka. I could say that about Rhea versus Charlotte. You know, but none of those matches compared to what Sasha and Bianca did. Right? And now, no matter what, Sasha will always have on her resume that she main evented WrestleMania, and then she has a legacy-defining match. On top of all the other defining matches, which I'll talk about in just a second, right? On top of all the other legacy-defining matches she already has, now she has one at WrestleMania that people are going to be talking about for years. For years. The night where WWE finally let fans back into the arenas, right, with everything that's happened with COVID, and then have that banger a main event. It's something that Sasha will be remembered for years, you know, because her and Bianca put on a classic. And even though Bianca won, I personally believe that Sasha came out more of the talking point. Because people expected Bianca to win. No matter how much I say Sasha should have won, Bianca was favored. She was favored from the minute she won the Royal Rumble. We all knew that, right? But for her to come in and for Sasha to do that on that stage, it's like, what else do you want me to say? Nothing that Bayley, Becky, or Charlotte have done at Mania compares to that. And the thing is, Sasha lost that match. And the only thing you could say is 0-6. That's all you could say. 0-6. Because that's the only thing you could try to take away from Sasha's great legacy. Sure, you could say, oh yeah, she never successfully defended the Raw Women's Championship, right? But when you think of the Raw Women's Championship, you think of the people that have held it since 2016. Sasha's one of the first, you know, one of the 3 or 4 people that come to mind when you think of that title. And that's crazy because she's never defended it. And that's not her fault, that's WWE's fault, easily. But you still think of her as the person who put that title on the map, especially with that rivalry with Charlotte back in 2016. When you think of the Raw Women's Championship, you think of Sasha, you think of Becky, you think of Ronda Rousey, you think of Asuka. Those are the 4 names that come to mind. I don't think Charlotte. I don't care about Charlotte. Charlotte hasn't done anything. To me, personally, she's done nothing to make that title iconic outside of her matches with Sasha Banks. And that's me being 100% honest with you guys. The only thing you can take away from Sasha's legacy is you guys claiming that, oh, she's 0-6 at Mania and never successfully defended the Raw Women's Championship. But her legacy transcends that stupid record. It does. It does. Yeah, it sucks at the end of the day that I have to deal with people saying that. And probably she has to hear that all the time on social media from her haters. But she doesn't care. When she was smiling at the entrance ramp, watching Bianca celebrate in the biggest moment of Bianca's career, and probably will be the biggest moment of Bianca's career. I don't know if she'll ever do anything that will top that moment, winning the title in the main event of WrestleMania. Right? She sat there and she smiled. She didn't think about that, oh, I just lost. Because Sasha doesn't care about winning and losing at the end of the day. She cares about leaving a lasting legacy that's going to follow her, beyond when she retires. Even when she's no longer here. When people go back on the WWE Network, they're going to go back and they're going to see Sasha and Bianca and what they did at WrestleMania 37. And they're going to compare it to Hogan and Andre and Stone Cold and The Rock. Because that's how great that moment and that match actually was. It was one of the greatest moments in the history of women's wrestling. It was one of the greatest moments in the history of a main event of WrestleMania. Her legacy transcends that stupid record. So you can be salty, you can be petty, you can try to troll and be negative and say whatever you want about Sasha's bad WrestleMania record. You can. And even though it sucks at the end of the day that she is 0-6, right? Her legacy transcends that. And people are not going to remember that for that stupid record. Plus, she's gonna win a WrestleMania here eventually. I have many ideas, and I'll probably do a future video on it, right? I have ideas of how they can go about this, but that's a video for another day. We'll just have to wait and see, right, for WrestleMania 38 in Dallas. I have a story, but I'll do another video on that. That's not what we're talking about here, right? Other reasons why, Sasha's the GOAT. Right? Her legacy transcends the negative things about her Hall of Fame resume. I already brought that up. Right? Her lasting impact on women's wrestling. The match against Bayley, right, from Brooklyn 2015. That's what started the women's revolution in many eyes. Because some of the stuff, if you ever go have a chance, right? Now that the network's on Peacock, I don't know if it's up there, but it probably should. It should be there, right? Go back and watch the WWE Untold of Sasha and Bayley from NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 2015, where they narrate what they were thinking about going into that match. Half the stuff that happened in that match was not planned. Not planned. They didn't tell the producers because there was this stigma and there's this stereotype of women's wrestling at that time. And then when you look at it, right, especially what they were doing in the Divas era, half the stuff that Sasha and Bayley did in that match was not allowed in the Divas era because they weren't looked at as wrestlers. They were looked at as, models. They were looked like as people to be admired, not for what they did in the ring, but for the way they looked and the way they acted. Sasha and Bayley changed the game that night. They reset the standard of women's wrestling, and Sasha specifically has been doing that ever since. Ever since. You look at everything she's done. Everything she's done in her Hall of Fame resume. It has set a standard for what women's wrestling is supposed to be and what it needs to be going into the future. And one day, she's not even 30 yet. She's nowhere close to done. But one day, right, with Bianca and Rhea and all these other younger superstars that are going to come out, God willing, through the next 3 years, through other wrestling promotions and NXT and so what, right? They're going to look up to Sasha Banks because she is the standard. When she calls herself the standard and the blueprint, it's not just a nickname, it's a fact. She defines what women wrestling and what wrestling in general should be. It's crazy to think about the impact she's had on women's wrestling and wrestling in general. And she continues to set a new standard every time she steps in the ring because she's always getting better. There's so many wrestlers, that you see that just do the same thing every single week, right? They do the same moves, right? For example, I hate to say this, but Randy Orton, right? Guy's great. I love Randy Orton, one of my favorites all time. But, me and a lot of my friends would agree that Randy Orton had the same gimmick and does the same thing over the last decade. He does the same moves every single time. A Randy Orton match is the same all the time. When you think of a John Cena, right? Even though he had his 5 moves of doom and he always has his normal stuff, there's a reason why he was called Big Match John. He would always pull out stuff that you've never seen before to make the match great. because you didn't expect it from Cena. He was always getting better behind the scenes, and then he would bring it out on the biggest stages when the lights were brightest. And it's what made Cena so great. It's one of the reasons why I miss him so much, because we don't have many guys like him in WWE today. Even guys like Kofi Kingston, right? Kofi Kingston, man, one of my favorite superstars of all time. If you watch him, if you truly watch and analyze his matches, he's always trying different things in the ring. Sasha Banks is the same thing. I could give you so many different examples of new moves and new variations that Sasha's tried during her matches. Like the 720 DDT that she did on Bianca at WrestleMania, right? Or the double knees to the outside on a ring post instead of her doing it in the ring like she normally does. She's always finding new ways to improvise her offense, to make it better, to make it look different, but to make it look presentable, professional, and clean. That's what it is. It's part of her legacy, man. It really is part of her legacy. She lives and breathes wrestling. Another reason why she's the greatest wrestler of all time, in my opinion. Her mainstream appeal. The main Sasha Banks is the Rock of today's era. If you watch The Rock back in the Attitude Era, Sasha Banks reminds me of The Rock. Sure, Sasha may not have the promo or charisma like The Rock has, but she has everything else. Nobody has the promo skills of The Rock. There's very few people in WWE history like Chris Jericho and Stone Cold and John Cena and CM Punk, right? Very few people that are actually able to go toe-to-toe with The Rock. So me saying that Sasha's promo skills are not on the level of The Rock, that's kind of unfair because it's The Rock, right? But Sasha, she reminds me so much of The Rock in the way she acts, the way she looks, her appearance. She looks like a star. While you have other superstars that come out wearing those generic WWE t-shirts, right? She comes out with new outfits every single week. She's resetting the standard of why she's the boss of the women's division. Reminding people like, yeah, I not only act like I'm the best, I look like the best. And I'm going to show you that every single week when you see me on television. You know, one thing that I miss now that she's no longer champion is every time she would come out, if she wasn't wrestling, she would have a new outfit, completely new, right? And it would be like, damn, man. And you see how it would match with her hair and the title, and you'll be like, damn, that's the appearance of an actual star. Her mainstream appeal. You see what she's doing right now, right? As Coach Scurry's in The Mandalorian. A lot of us believe she's leaving for a couple months ago, film Mandalorian season 3. And even though we don't have any confirmation of that, right? That's what we all believe. And the thing about it is, her mainstream appeal has brought Star Wars fans to WWE. She's not just Sasha Banks anymore. She's Koska Reeves. She's Mercedes Varnado. She has the same mainstream appeal that The Rock had when The Rock left WWE to go to Hollywood. And everybody knows once Sasha leaves, and once Sasha retires, when she's completely done with wrestling, right? Because she's made it clear that she has no intentions to stop wrestling anytime soon. When she truly decides that she no longer wants to do it, and remember, she's only 30, she has a movie career waiting for her. Waiting for her. Who knows how many deals, how many offers she has, you know, and gigs that she could do. And probably that she decides not to do because her love for wrestling is so high and she doesn't want to leave the WWE. Because wrestling will always come first to her, as long as she can continue to do it. She has the same mainstream appeal that The Rock and John Cena had, right? And there's nobody else in that company that really has that mainstream appeal. Becky kind of had it, but then, you know, we never really got to fully see it develop because I guess Becky got pregnant or whatever, right? But Sasha's really, if you really look at that company, and maybe Roman Reigns, I'll probably say Roman Reigns too. Sasha and Roman Reigns are the only two superstars I can think of that have that mainstream appeal, that whatever they choose to do when they're not wrestling, they're going to be successful at. It's really that simple. So her legacy, right, transcends her negative, you know, the negative things that she hasn't done yet, right? The negative things you could say about Sasha Banks, right? She's the most consistent wrestler, you know, on the entire roster. Right, every Sasha Banks match she has is good, at least. Even the TV matches that you don't think that matter. If you ask any superstar in that company, right, especially the woman, right, if you ask them what's your best match, most of them would say Sasha Banks. Most of them would say Sasha Banks. Bayley, Asuka, Alexa Bliss, Nia Jax, right? Carmella, Charlotte, Becky. The list goes on and on and on. Io Shirai. Most of them would say, "Oh, Sasha was my best match," because she is so consistent in the ring. She refuses to be nothing but great when she's in the ring, even if she's only getting a couple minutes on television here and there. Right? No matter if it's a 5-minute match or a 25-minute match, she goes out there willing to put it all on the line to put on the best performance possible, so that when she goes back behind the curtain, she feels like, "Yep, I was Sasha Banks tonight. I was the boss. I was the blueprint. I was the standard. And I just showed it out there." I'm giving you guys these reasons, man. I'm trying to stay objective and professional. If you guys notice, I'm not marking out or anything. You know? So, like, just to keep track so you guys aren't getting confused, right? I've said her legacy transcends, the negative things you could say about her, right? She's the most consistent wrestler, in WWE today, not just the women's division. Her mainstream appeal is absolutely incredible, right? And what other things have I not brought up yet? Oh, I forgot. Her match catalog. Her match catalog is one of the deepest match catalogs, I think, in the history of wrestling. I really truly believe that. I'll give you guys, some of the matches I believe are Sasha's greatest of her all time. And I want you guys to take those matches, right? And then try to come up with a top 10 of women's matches, right? Some of the best women's matches you've ever seen without Sasha in them. Right? And notice how many matches she has. Fantastic matches. Matches that people go back and replay all the time. Right? And comparing them, how many that she has and how much the rest have. Make that comparison, really. I've seen some people do it on Twitter, but actually think about it. I'll try to do it by person, because there's a lot. There's a lot. You have Sasha versus Bayley, NXT TakeOver Brooklyn. You have Sasha versus Bayley, NXT TakeOver Respect. You have Sasha versus Bayley, Hell in a Cell from last year, 2020, when Sasha won the SmackDown Women's Championship. You have Sasha versus Bayley, the SmackDown 2 weeks later, where they faced off for the SmackDown Women's Championship again. That's 4 matches right there. And then there's a couple of one-on-one matches that Sasha and Bayley had just on Raw. They were on random editions of Raw that were really, really good. I don't have the specific dates for them, but there's 4 matches that I can think of the top of my head, right? And true women's wrestling fans know what matches I'm talking about when I talk about those Raw TV show matches with Sasha and Bayley. And that's just Bayley I'm talking about. So, I gave you guys 4, but if I had the dates, that would be 5 or 6 right there. Right? And who knows, I may be forgetting one. But, other ones I think of, right? You think about Sasha versus Asuka. What's who do next, right? There's 4 matches that come to my mind right away when I think about Sasha Banks and Asuka. You got Sasha Banks and Asuka the night after the Royal Rumble back in 2018, right? When Asuka won the Women's Royal Rumble, the first one. I remember how Sasha had no preparation for that match. They had legit decided that they were going to do the match, just about 2 to 3 hours before showtime. And that's one of Asuka's greatest matches on the main roster. And it's one of Sasha's, right? The night after Royal Rumble 2018. Then you have 3 matches from last year. You have the Extreme Rules match from the Extreme Rules, the horror show, right, where you had the fuck finish. But that was a fantastic match, going up until the finish. Like, honestly, a lot of people believe that had the potential to be the best match of the year since, there was no crowd for most of it. That match was fantastic. It was phenomenal. Phenomenal, right? Then you could say Sasha versus Asuka just from 2 weeks later on Raw, right, where Sasha officially won the Raw Women's Championship, right? Then you have Sasha versus Asuka at SummerSlam just about a month later. And that match was only about 12 minutes long, and it is hard hitting. I think about the Sasha powerbomb spot to Asuka on the outside of the ring, and then the Sasha codebreaker spot. Love it, love that match, even though it's only about 12 to 13 minutes long. Next up, Sasha versus Asuka from Survivor Series. A couple months later, once Sasha with the SmackDown Women's Championship, Sasha finally was able to get that clean victory over Asuka. And the thing about it is, that match could have gone on another 5-10 minutes. But the ending sequence with the roll-ups, man, absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. And that's the Sasha versus Asuka. So what? I just gave you guys 4 matches. So that now there's about, 8 or 9 matches on 2 people alone? Then what? Sasha and Charlotte How many great matches did they have? Their matches from NXT TakeOver, right? They had a couple great ones in NXT. You know, then you could put almost their entire 2016 rivalry on there. You could put the Sasha versus Charlotte match from the Raw after the brand split in 2016 when Sasha won the Raw Women's Championship for the first time. That was an incredible moment, right? Then you have Sasha versus SummerSlam. Sasha versus Charlotte at SummerSlam a couple weeks later. Then you have Sasha versus Charlotte at Hell in a Cell in Boston a couple months later. Then you have Sasha versus Charlotte on Falls Count Anywhere match on another additional Raw. I believe it was November at this point. So that's another 4 matches. Then you have Sasha versus Charlotte from Roadblock right at the end of the year, where I think they had the Iron Women's match. So like I said, there's a lot. That's like 5 matches right there. 5 really good matches between those two. And as much as I hate Charlotte, her chemistry with Sasha is impeccable. So now what? I'm up to like 13, 14 matches through only 3 people. Then let's go to Becky next, right? We go to Becky. You know, there was a great match Sasha and Becky had at an NXT TakeOver. I'm forgetting the specific date. But I feel like you guys know what I'm talking about. Sasha was NXT Women's Champion. Becky was the challenger, right? Sasha and Becky had kind of just broken up from a friendship. So that's another match right there. So that's 1. And then there's 2 on the main roster. Sasha versus Becky and Charlotte, right? WrestleMania 32. So that's a triple threat match. Then you have both of Sasha and Becky's matches from 2019 when Sasha first came back with the blue hair. The Clash of Champions match where Sasha has probably my favorite gear ever, where she has like the Red Sox gear, right? The red, navy, and gold. Love that gear. And then I would say the Hell in a Cell match. The Hell in a Cell match with Becky is incredible. Incredible. The only thing that outshines that is the Bayley match. And some people think that the Bayley Hell in a Cell match, the only reason why it's not better than the Becky match is because the Bayley match was missing a crowd. And that's subjective. I think the Bayley match is still good enough without a crowd. But with a crowd, it's probably one of the greatest Hell in a Cell matches in all time. It's not the greatest Hell in a Cell match. I'm not trying to disrespect Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, all right? I'm not. I definitely think it's one of the greatest Hell in a Cell matches of all time if there was a crowd in there, right? I'm not going to disrespect Taker and Shawn like that. So don't go try to put words in my mouth, people. But that's like what? That's another 4 matches right there. So now what? We're up the coast of 19 matches? 19 matches, people. With about 4 names. You know, Asuka, Bayley, Charlotte, and Becky, the 4 horsewomen. Right? Then you could put the match with Ronda Rousey from the Royal Rumble 2019. That was a fantastic match. In my opinion, that was Ronda's best match all year, you know, in WWE. That was her best match. And I really want to see another Sasha and Ronda match when Ronda eventually comes back. Because we know Ronda will eventually come back, after her pregnancy. But you guys get the point. But, now we're up to about 20 matches, right? And then you could put, her matches against Carmella. Those are really good matches. That's easily Carmella's best match. If you want, you could put the match with Alexa Bliss from SummerSlam 2017. I would say that was Alexa's best match on the roster. You could put any of the matches against Nia Jax, because Nia Jax sucks, but Sasha makes Nia Jax look like an absolute beast, right? Especially I think about the Sasha Banks versus Nia Jax #1 contenders match, before SummerSlam in 2017. It was in Sasha's hometown. That's probably not his best match on the main roster. So that's another 3 or 4 matches you can put on there. So now we're up to like 23, 24 matches. And there's still a lot that I'm missing. Io Shirai from NXT Great American Bash last year. That's another great match. So now we're up to 25. And, I'm not even counting some of the tag team matches against like Tegan Nox and Shotzi Blackheart. And Asuka and Kairi Sane. There's so many other great matches that I'm forgetting. Some of the matches from, against Natalya on Monday Night Raw. There's a couple that I'm forgetting. There's one against Ruby Riott, I think, in a 6-pack challenge. That was great. So like I said, man, that's about 24, 25 matches just on Sasha alone, going up against 6 or 7 women. If you look at some of the best women's matches of all time and compare them against Sasha's catalog, Sasha has probably at least 5 or 6 matches in the top 10 greatest women's matches of all time just by herself. Just by herself. I didn't even mention the Sasha versus Bianca match for WrestleMania a couple weeks ago. So that's another one. So now we're over 25 matches. It's crazy. Her match catalog is undeniable. It's undeniable. And the last thing I would say, before we get into the top 10 women list, I know a lot of you guys are excited about that. The last thing I would say is Sasha Banks, even though she does lose a lot of big matches because WWE doesn't book her correctly half the time, even though they know how great she is, they know that she's one of their top stars, it's just that they choose to be stupid and book her in that matter, right? But the one thing I will say also is, who does Sasha remind you guys of? An all-time great male superstar, one of the best performers ever, arguably the best performer ever, right? Who lost a lot of big matches, but always left something for you to talk about. Who had so many great legacy-defining matches that even when he lost, it didn't impact him as much. Who was it? Somebody from the Attitude Era, HBK Sizzle, Shawn Michaels. Go back and look at Shawn's career. He lost so many big matches against John Cena in WrestleMania, against The Undertaker, right? He didn't have many world title reigns. If you really look at it, I think Shawn was only about a 5 or 6 time world champion. And he's still arguably the best performer of all time. Shawn lost a lot of big matches during his prime. A lot. But people don't really talk about the losses he took. They talked about the performances he left in the ring and the lasting impact it left. And that's one of the reasons why he's recognized as one of, if not the best performer in WWE history. It's the reason why people wanted Shawn to come back to face AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan. Because they believed he was that damn good. Even though he was in advanced age, he could still come out and give us a really good match. Doesn't that remind you of Sasha Banks? Someone who, even though she loses a lot of big matches, it doesn't really define her. It doesn't change how people look at her. Her fan base is still as rampant as ever, and people still look at her as one of the best of all time. Sasha Banks is the HBK of her generation. Not just for the women, but for the entire company. She's just that damn good. She's so consistent. Her match catalog is so great, and it's only going to expand more and more the longer she continues to wrestle. Really. Sasha Banks is the HBK of her generation. I feel like it's undisputed, really. I feel like if you don't agree with me, you're just not looking at the facts. That's the simple way to put it. You're not looking at the facts close enough. You're not looking at her greatness close enough. Really. I don't know if Peacock has the playlist of Sasha's greatest matches like the network does, but that playlist has to be updated. Go look at that playlist. It's amazing. I just named you about 25 great Sasha Banks matches, and I'm still missing a good amount of them. Comparing Sasha's greatest 25 matches to 25 of the greatest women's wrestling matches of all time, just with Sasha not on the list, it's Sasha. It makes Sasha look superior. And if you put Sasha on the list of the greatest women's wrestling matches of all time, half that list is just her matches alone. So can you really deny that she's the HBK of her generation? I don't think you can. I really don't think you can. Right? But like I said, it's subjective. If you don't think Sasha's the GOAT, that's whatever. Right? It's not a problem. And just let me know your thoughts. Give me your opinion. Who do you think is the GOAT? I will break down your argument with facts, but at the end of the day, it's just my opinion. We're all subjected to our own opinion, just like what we're going to be doing next. So I told you guys at the beginning, this was going to be a 2-part big podcast, right? So we are going to be discussing the top 10 women of all time. I was, just sitting back thinking, talking to my boy Anthony, my former co-host, and I was just like, damn, if I'm going to be doing this, why Sasha's the GOAT podcast, why not go a step further and give my top 10 greatest women of all time, right? Why not? And definitely this is a list that took a lot of thought, right? And it's subjective. And like I said, I want you guys not only, give me guys what you guys think of me talking about Sasha Banks is the GOAT for like 40 minutes. Like I knew I was gonna talk long. But give me you guys your thoughts in the comments section down below about what you guys think. Do you guys agree with me? Do you guys think Sasha is the GOAT? Or give me who do you guys think is your GOAT? Right? And like I said, I'll break down your argument and tell you why you're wrong, but it's whatever. All right, but anyway, yeah, so I wanted to do my top 10 women of all time, right? And this is mainly WWE focused, right? I feel like putting other people from other brands just makes it a little more confusing. Like maybe we'll do another podcast where we just talk about, others like Tessa Blanchard and those out there as well. But this is my top 10 women's wrestlers of all time, mainly WWE focused, of course. But before we get into that, I got some notable exclusions, right? I know some of you guys are gonna be, have your own list, and then there's gonna be names that are not on my list but are on your list, and there's gonna be names that are not on your list but are on my list. So notable exclusions, right? Right. I'm gonna go through these very quickly. So the Bella Twins, right? They're not on my list. I think the Bella Twins are overrated. I like Nikki Bella as a wrestler. I don't like Brie Bella. Remember Botch Mode? You guys remember that a couple years ago? If you guys look back at what Nikki Bella did in 26, I think it was 2016 when we had the brand split, right? Nikki came back. She had just come back from injury. And she actually was pretty good on the SmackDown Women's Division. She had a couple of feuds with, I think, Carmella and Natalia, I believe. Right? I thought they were building up Nikki Bella to eventually become SmackDown Women's Champion. That's what I thought. But because she was a top babyface on that show, and she actually had some good matches. So I kind of got some respect from Nikki Bella from that time. I never liked Nikki Bella versus Ronda Rousey at Evolution. I never agreed with that. But Nikki can actually wrestle a little bit. She's not terrible, but she's not on my top 10. Neither is her sister, of course. I have Eve Torres, right? If you guys follow Eve on Instagram, she's like a defense specialist. So she teaches like defense classes for I think for women, and she's really good at it, right? Eve Torres, she's actually very underrated. If you watch her back in the Divas era in the early 2000s, she wasn't a bad wrestler. It was just because she was a diva, right? But she actually had some good matches, but she is a notable exclusion on my list, right? Big one, Beth Phoenix. She's not in my top 10. Right, and I tried to look. I was trying to say where could I put Beth Phoenix on here, but I really couldn't find anybody that I wanted to take out to put Beth in. So Beth for me would be like number 11, number 12, really. Like Beth was great. I just had nowhere to put her on my top 10, really. If there was like a 10B, right? Beth would be there, but yeah. So Rhea Ripley, she's not on my list. She's not there. She could get there, of course, one day. But with the way, I have not been a fan of the way she's looked on Raw, So we'll see. Rhea's still in the early stages of her main roster career. But for right now, the chances of Rhea getting into my top 10 are kind of low, if I'm being really honest with you guys. Next up, Bianca. Bianca will probably be in the top 10 by the time she retires, in my opinion. She's just getting started. She has the mainstream appeal. Even though I will keep reminding you clowns that I don't think Bianca should have beat Sasha at WrestleMania. They should have saved the title victory for SummerSlam. But, I digress. Bianca is just getting started. She'll get there probably by the time she retires. She'll probably be in the top 10 list. Right, but she had nothing memorable before her match with Sasha. She had a couple good NXT TakeOver matches, but she never had a defining moment. Never had a defining moment. All right, until WrestleMania with Sasha. So we'll see what Bianca does now that she's SmackDown Women's Champion. We'll see what kind of legacy Bianca creates for herself. But for right now, she's not there. She's not there yet. She's just getting started. Bianca will most likely be top 10 when she retires. Io Shirai, she's not in my top 10, right? I know a lot of people want to put her there for her great NXT Women's Championship run, and the babyface run Io Shirai had reminds me, in my opinion, the way Io was booked during that reign is the way Sasha should have been booked during her SmackDown Women's Championship reign. You know, running through that division, having great matches. Io Shirai is great, right? My favorite Io moment will always be Sasha versus Io from NXT Great American Bash, but Io still has a lot of time. A lot of people believe Io's going to be coming up to the main roster anyway, right? I'm not going to put Io in there for one great reign in NXT, right? I'm not going to put her in there, right? She could get in there. You know, I would have to make some changes on my list because, you know, I'm going to be honest, my top 10 list is kind of hard. You know, there's only maybe like 2 or 3 spots where I could see it changing, to be honest. You know, because Bianca will be in there one day. Io could be in there one day. Rhea could be in there one day. And who knows what other woman, you know, could come along. But for right now, Io's right on the edge looking in. So, like, Io, Bianca, Beth, they're all, like, if I had a 10A, 10B, 10C, they all could be in the top 10, but I just couldn't take anybody out to put them in. Right, so now we're going to get into the official top 10. I'm going to try to do this rather quickly, not waste too much time, right? But here we go. Number 10, I have Mickie James, right? It's kind of ironic because, you know, Mickie James was in the news, depending on when you guys are listening to this. You know, WWE sent her belongings in a trash bag, and, you know, I'm not going to go talking about it, right? I feel like everybody else has already mentioned that. Yes, what WWE did, it's wrong. And if Mickie, you know, props to Mickie. Mickie hadn't went out on social media and called out, you know, WWE for doing that, they would have continued that practice, right? And it's not right. It's not right. You know, you shouldn't be sending, you know, belongings of your superstars in a trash bag. You know, I feel like there's way more professional and presentable ways, you know, that you could do that will make the superstars have respect for you, at least. Saying it in the trash bag just makes you feel like, you know, it doesn't care. But, you know, reports came out that WWE's been doing that for years anyway, you know. So I'm just happy that Mickie came out and said it, you know, so that future superstars, right, no matter if they leave the company or get terminated or whatever, they won't hopefully have to go through that practice, right? Plus, you know, it kind of got rid of some of those stupid corporate suitors anyway, right? You know, like Mark Carano, and, you know, there's a couple other ones in there. But still, you know, I feel like WWE's never going to be back on the right track until Vince is out of creative. Like I said, have Vince focus on business, but get his ass out of creative. That's my opinion. But I just wanted to mention that really quick. Mickie's great, right? Mickie's great. I hate that she didn't get to have that last main roster run, right? The match against Asuka was disappointing. She never got the Sasha Banks feud that we all wanted, right? But Mickie, man, if you watch her early in her career, you know, some of her matches with Lita and Trish, she was a trailblazer. She really was. She was entertaining. She had charisma. She was good in the ring, right? And she has a lot of memorable moments. And she set the path for the 4 horsemen and people that came after her. So, you know, Mickie definitely deserves to be in the top 10, right? And it's kind of the thing that had me put Mickie ahead of Beth. Because like I said, you know, Beth would be, 10A or 11, you know, and then Bianca and Io would be right behind her, you know. So it's those memorable moments for Mickie James that really got her on my list. Beth has memorable moments of herself, but not as many. There's not as many big moments that I remember from Beth Phoenix's career out, but I remember a lot from Mickie's career. Number 9, I have Ronda Rousey, right? And I feel like when Ronda comes back, she has a good opportunity of moving up on this list. Ronda's 1 year in WWE was arguably the best 1 year in the history of WWE. You can say Sheamus, you can bring up AJ Styles in 2016, but Ronda's 1 year in WWE was incredible. It was incredible. The match against Triple H and Stephanie McMahon, that was probably the best thing on that WrestleMania 34 card. That was a fantastic moment, right? So you had great matches for the most part. Matches against Bayley, matches against Charlotte, right? Her match against Sasha Banks at the Royal Rumble, like I talked about earlier, Royal Rumble 2019, that was easily her best match in that whole entire year span, right? She was a great Raw Women's Champion, if you ask me. Great Raw Women's Champion, you know. She defended. Remember, she would defend that title after each pay-per-view. So the night after the pay-per-view, she would defend the title again. She was actually there every single week. She wasn't a part-time champion like people thought she was gonna be. You know, she was there every single week, cutting promos, and she improved every time you saw her. She got better. It was crazy how quickly she got adapted to the world of wrestling. It truly is crazy how quickly she got used to this new life. You know, and it sucks because we never got the Becky versus Ronda 101 singles match. I think about that segment where Becky won the Women's Royal Rumble and then she announces that she was going to face against Ronda. How electrifying a segment that was, because Becky cut a great promo. Ronda cut a even greater promo, right? If you guys remember, Ronda has the mic and she says, "I could snap your arm." She was like, I think, what did she say specifically? Like, me, you, and everyone in this arena knows I could snap your arm if I wanted to in 2 seconds, right? And then she was like, "Me, you, and everyone in this arena knows," right? And she said something else that was fire. She says, I think what she said, like, "You worship the ground that I step on." And it wasn't a heel turn because Ronda wouldn't turn heel till a couple weeks later. But still, it was a great promo by Ronda, you know? So I think about that segment. I'm like, damn, the fact that they just had to throw Charlotte in there. Had to throw Charlotte in there and then ruin what was going to be a fantastic singles match. Because as disappointing as the triple threat was at WrestleMania, I feel like that was more because Charlotte was in that match. I feel like if it was just a singles match between Ronda and Becky, it would have been much better, right? So when Ronda, you know, hopefully when she has her kid, you know, I expect Ronda to come back and go on another big run, right? And definitely I'm excited for it because I love Ronda Rousey. I was a fan of her in MMA. You know, she's a Dragon Ball fan like I am. So when she came to WWE, I was really excited. And I feel like she had an amazing 1 year in WWE. An amazing year. Plus, without her, they don't get that main event spot. No matter what, even though Sasha and Bianca was a much better main event than the main event of WrestleMania 35, she elevated that women's division because for the most of that year, the women's division was booked pretty seriously, if you ask me, right? Even though Sasha and Bayley could have been booked much better during that year instead of feuding with the Riot Squad and Absolution for most of the year, still, the women's wrestling was taken seriously during 2018. And you know, you don't get that well Ronda Rousey. You don't get the women's division to the main event of WrestleMania without that. You know? So definitely Ronda has to be put in the top 10 just for that alone. Just for that alone. And plus, I feel like Ronda's legacy is going to expand when she does eventually come back. You know, give me another Ronda and Sasha match. Give me Ronda versus Bayley. Ronda versus Asuka. Ronda versus Bianca. Ronda versus Ripley. Right? Ronda versus Becky. I don't want to see Ronda versus Charlotte again. No. But there's so much you can do with Ronda when she comes back. I feel like when she does choose to come back, it'll probably be when, you know, things are back to normal and we have fans. But it's going to be special. It's going to be special. All right, moving on. Charlotte's at number 8, right? As much as I didn't want to put her in the top 10, and as much as I believe Charlotte's overrated, right? I know a lot of people are going to be mad at me for having Charlotte this low. Charlotte's not in my top 5? What? She's not in the top 3? No. Charlotte's lucky to be in my top 10. She really is. Charlotte is the most overrated WWE superstar in history, in my opinion. She's not that good in the ring. She's really not, right? Really not. Like, how many iconic Charlotte matches are there? Outside of, of course, the Sasha matches, right? The Becky matches, the Bayley matches, the Asuka matches. What else is there for Charlotte? Really? Charlotte's best matches are against the 4 Horsewomen and Asuka. Like, we all know the 4 Horsewomen have great matches with each other. Like, it's self-explanatory. Charlotte doesn't do anything for me. Nothing. She doesn't elevate the women's division. She doesn't elevate those titles, right? It just seems like more stat padding just to put on her resume. When Sasha loses, right, it's a huge thing because it's legacy defining and it leaves an impact. When Charlotte wins or loses, nothing happens. I bring up that NXT Women's Championship reign when she beat Rhea Ripley. She did nothing to elevate the women's division. Did nothing to elevate NXT. Did nothing to elevate the NXT Women's title. Did nothing for the ratings against AEW. She's overrated. That's my opinion. I'm sorry, but she's overrated. That's my opinion. Right? I know a lot of people are gonna disagree that I don't have Charlotte in my top 5, but she doesn't belong there. In my opinion, no, she doesn't belong there. I don't care if you give her 30 title reigns. I don't care how much you give her. Right? That's the reason why I don't talk about accolades as much, because, like I said, it's a scripted product. Right? Look at R-Truth. He's like a 55-time 24/7 champion. Like, what does that really matter at the end of the day? It's what you do in the ring. It's the moments you deliver on. It's the stuff that we remember for years and years to come. Charlotte doesn't do that. She doesn't. And I'm sorry, but that's just the truth. That's just the truth. Charlotte's on the top 10 list because, she is part of the 4 Horsewomen. She has done some good things. But for the most part, man, I'm sorry, man, Charlotte is overrated. Overrated. All right. I know a lot of people are going to complain of how low I have her, but, come on. Let's be serious. But I think we're at 7, right? All right. 10, 9, 8. Yeah, number 7. Number 7, I have Becky. I have Becky Lynch, right? And the thing about it is, part of the inspiration for this list came after I saw what the WWE Network did with their top 50 women of all time. Their list was bad. They had Becky, I think, at number 3. Charlotte was at number 2, and Trish was at number 1. They had Sasha at number 6. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Especially after WrestleMania with the Mask and Bianca. I was like, really? So I have Becky at number 7. I know some people are going to feel like that's a little bit low, but, right, let's be serious, right? Becky, for me, the memorable part of Becky's career comes when she became the man. All right, I remember the heel turn at SummerSlam. What was that? SummerSlam 2018, I believe. I remember the heel turn. Great moment, right? And the man character is great. I love the character of the man. But, let's be serious here. Becky's 1 year as Raw Women's Champion. Everyone brings up that reign. That reign was not good. That reign was not good. The Lacey Evans feud was garbage. The Italian match was okay. The match was good at SummerSlam, but I had no care for the feud. Her most memorable part of that reign is her beating Sasha and Asuka. That's it. And like I said, that's 4 Horsewomen and Asuka. That's expected. That's expected. Outside of that, what did Becky do? The Survivor Series match against Shayna and Bayley was a failure. The TLC match where Kairi Sane got the concussion was a failure, because you had Becky and Charlotte going after the tag titles instead of having Becky defend the Raw Women's Championship. After Becky defeated Sasha at Hell in a Cell, Becky went close to 3 months without defending that title. I remember, because she didn't defend it on the road to Survivor Series. She didn't defend it before TLC when her and Charlotte were going after the tag titles. She didn't defend that title, I think, until she faced Asuka at the Rumble. So what? A third of her reign? 25% of her reign, she didn't defend the title consecutively. 3 months that she didn't defend that title. But you guys want me to come out and say, oh, Becky's the top 5 all time? Sure, yeah, you held the Raw Women's Championship for a year, right? And people associate you with that title. But at the end of the day, Becky's 1 year as champion was not good. Outside of the the elevation and the growth of the man character, honestly, what else has Becky done? I'm not saying I'm a Becky Lynch fan, but what I'm saying here, for Becky to get into the top 5 of all time, in my opinion, when she comes back, she has to show people how great she is. Because Sasha Banks has been carrying this company for the last year and a half. So has Bayley. So has Asuka. Right? Charlotte hasn't done anything. What has Charlotte done? Nothing in the last year and a half. Becky hasn't done anything. Her reign was disappointing, like I just said. So now I feel like whenever Becky does come back, which I don't know when she's going to come back, right? Whenever Becky does come back, and no matter if she's on Raw or SmackDown, she's going to have to prove to everybody that she is as good as she is. This is when we truly see what Becky's legacy really is. Really. Because I think about Becky, and I think about the 4 Horsewomen. Becky has the least amount of great matches out of everybody in the 4 Horsewomen, if you actually really think about it. Bayley, Charlotte. Actually, no. I think Charlotte has less than her. Sorry, I apologize for that statement. Oh, man. I almost gave Charlotte a compliment. But the thing about it is, outside of the Becky versus Sasha, Becky versus Asuka, Becky versus Charlotte matches, I'm like, what other great matches does Becky have? We really don't haven't never we've never really seen a Becky versus Bailey feud on the main roster. So it's like, I don't know. But I'm sitting here like, what other great matches does Becky have? Honestly, what other great matches does Becky have outside of Sasha, Asuka, and Charlotte? That's what I'm saying. Becky has a lot to prove to me and to everybody else when she comes back. She needs to be on a whole nother level. It's not just about her character. We know Becky's great at cutting promos, and she's good with the man character. We understand that. I want Becky to show me in the ring. Remind me of how good you actually are. Remind me of that. Come out and have banger matches like Sasha's been doing for the last year and a half. Every single week, every single pay-per-view you're on. That's what I want to see from Becky. I really do. So Becky could definitely move up, but I don't know. I don't know. It's all going to depend on what happens with her when she comes back. So Becky, I have Becky at 7, but she can definitely move up. I got AJ Lee at number 6. Yeah, I know this might anger some people, but AJ was great. I loved AJ. I loved it. I loved the crazy storylines with Daniel Bryan and John Cena and CM Punk and Kane. You know, the GM storyline. Plus, she was really good in the ring. We all know the promo AJ cut and the whole Divas division, right? How she was going to go through every single one of them and how she was not like any of them. And AJ did for most of a year, right? For the better part of a year, AJ was a great Divas champion. She basically had a fantastic women's championship reign. And AJ now, man, one of my dream matches is Sasha Banks versus AJ Lee. I would love to see that. You know, and AJ's still young. She left WWE at a very, very, very young age. You know, I think she's still in her 30s. So if AJ wanted to come back, there's so many great matches that they could do. So many great feuds, right? And the fact that WWE tried to write AJ out of history when they had Nikki Bella had like a 1-year title reign, right? Like people were just going to forget how great AJ actually was. Just because, you know, WWE had a bad falling out with CM Punk. You know, I hate that. I really do. But, you know, I feel like people would, you know, forget how great AJ was. I love AJ. I love AJ, you know. And she's number 6 on my list. She really is. Some people probably have her lower in the top 10, but I think AJ deserves to be up there. Really do. Go back and watch AJ back in the 2010s, man. Really, truly, she would easily fit into the women's division. She would succeed there without a doubt. She would fit in there perfectly. Very underrated wrestler AJ was. So next up, we're getting to the top 5. At number 5, I have Bayley. Right, Bayley's mainly in here because of what she did during the pandemic and that 1-year SmackDown Women's Championship reign. I think I've said this before, but in my opinion, Bayley's 1 year as SmackDown Women's Champion was better than Becky's 1 year as Raw Women's Champion. Go back and look at the reign. Go look at the storylines. The storyline with Sasha Banks, right, as they were taking over the entire women's division when they won the tag titles and then Sasha won the Raw Women's Championship, right? Bayley had a fantastic reign as SmackDown Women's Champion. She reinvented herself with her heel character. She had good matches with Naomi, Carmella, even Lacey Evans, who I don't give a crap about. You know, she had some really good matches with Nikki Cross. And, you know, the way they wrapped up her reign with the Sasha Banks storyline was perfect. Even though a lot of us would argue that they would have waited until WrestleMania for that, but still, it was still great. It was still great, man. And mainly because of that great reign, that's why Bayley's in the top 5. Bayley's had a lot of success. A lot of success. She's won Money in the Bank. She was an NXT Women's Champion. She's had great matches, right? Bayley versus Asuka. Bayley versus Charlotte. Bayley versus Sasha, right? Those are the 3 big feuds and Bayley's best opponents of all time. Like I said, I'm still waiting for a Bayley versus Becky feud. But, you know, maybe one day. Maybe one day. You know, but Bayley's fantastic. She's great. And, you know, the main reason of her being able to reinvent herself as a heel, especially when for so long she was a lovable babyface. A lot of people saw her as the female John Cena, right? The fact that she was actually able to reinvent herself, you know, and succeed, I got to give her all the credit for that. She's great. She's great, and in my opinion, she deserves to be in the top 5. She has the accolades, she has the moments, she has the matches, she has the character work. She deserves to be in there. Especially, I give extra points for what her and Sasha did, carrying the company during the pandemic. Carrying the company. That's what they did. They're the best thing on all 3 shows. And, I give extra points for that. So, for all that, Bayley does deserve to be in the top 5. At number 4, I have Lita. I feel like this is more self-explanatory, right? The Lita and Trish feuds from back in the day. What Lita did during the women's division. Her and Trish Stratus were the Trailblazers, I don't really have to go through what Lita did. You guys know it. Her history with being the women's champion, her iconic moments, right? Even some of the lower parts of her career, like with Edge and Matt Hardy, she still had some really good stuff on TV during that time. So, even though Lita and Trish are more towards the Divas era, of course, right? I feel like their legacy and their impact, especially during the Attitude era, right? And after that, into the Ruthless Aggression era, right? I feel like it's undeniable, so I have Lita at number 4. Number 3, I have Asuka, right? Asuka, her NXT Women's Championship reign is the main reason why she's that high, because that reign is probably the greatest NXT Women's Championship reign of all time. Sasha's is up there, but I'm not going to sit here and deny how great Asuka's NXT title run was. She should have never lost that streak to Charlotte. Honestly, the way it should have been done is Asuka should have went undefeated throughout that entire year, and then the year afterwards, they should have done Ronda versus Asuka. That's what I would have done. I would have had Ronda be the one to break Asuka's streak in a killer match, right? But still, Asuka's had success in the main roster. She's won both the Raw and SmackDown Women's Championships. She's won the Women's Tag Team Championships with multiple partners, right? She's won Money in the Bank. She's won the Women's Royal Rumble. Asuka's pretty much done it all. She's pretty much done it all. And even though her Raw Women's Championship reign, the one from last year, was disappointing, I'm not going to deny the greatness Asuka had, right? She's had some really great matches, especially Asuka versus Sasha, Asuka versus Becky, Asuka versus Charlotte. It's mainly the same names every single time, but, I'm not going to sit here and deny how great Asuka is. Even when she hasn't been booked correctly, she's still an incredible character, an incredible worker. So definitely, I believe Asuka at number 3 is absolutely perfect. Perfect spot for her. Could Asuka get the number 2? Maybe. Probably not in my list, but I think for Asuka being the top 3, I feel like that is perfect for her. Number 2, I got Trish Stratus, right? Stratus faction. I feel like this is, self-explanatory. Trish was the greatest until the emergence of the 4 Horsewomen, right? I still need my Sasha versus Trish dream match. I don't have to tell you guys what Trish did during the Attitude Era. You guys know it, right? All the championships she's won. Trish is amazing. So Trish being at number 2, I'm not really going to explain that because that's self-explanatory. And of course, number 1, the title of the video already said it. Sasha Banks, the greatest wrestler. The greatest women's wrestler of all time, one of the greatest all-round wrestlers I've ever seen. So I got Sasha at number 1. So like I said, it's my list. I know there's going to be people that disagree with it. But like I said, I'm going to go through it one more time. At number 10, I got Mickie James. Number 9, Ronda Rousey. Number 8, Charlotte. Number 7, Becky. Number 6, AJ. Number 5, Bayley. Number 4, Lita. Number 3, Asuka. Number 2, Trish Stratus. And number 1, the best female wrestler of all time, in my opinion, Sasha Banks. So like I said, it's my list. It's subjective. If you don't agree with me, I don't care, right? But let me know in the comment section what's your top 10 women's list of all time. Also, let me know what you guys thought of my my little 40-minute little monologue on why I think Sasha's the GOAT. But like I said, be respectful to one another. Do not make me have to block you guys, all right? If you guys disagree with each other, that's fine. Just be respectful. That's all I ask. But other than that, guys, that's all I got for you guys today. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this nice little bonus episode. I know this was a long one, but you guys have been asking for this one for a while. So I guess this being a longer episode, it's worth it. But, either way, if you guys enjoyed, leave a like on the video, comment, subscribe. You guys are new to the channel. Hit the bell next to my name, Fitzmonk TV, so you guys are notified every time I post a new video. I'll see you guys later. Stay safe and healthy, y'all. Peace.